was singing, and the contrast. You grow the tree, and for the purpose of becoming a cross, it seems like such an odd combination, but it's a reality of life, and it speaks to what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about wisdom and being wise and understanding. It is difficult. We all want to be smarter, I think, than what we are, and we certainly want to be wise, even beyond our age and the like. But there's a scripture in the book of James. James, the brother of Jesus, is talking about wisdom. And he's talking to the church about wisdom and how it applies, and he talks about the attributes. But he begins here in James chapter 3 and in verse 13. So the question that could be asked of all of us at any time is, who is a wise and understanding among you? And it is an interesting question, but what we want to focus on, part of this is the fact that he's asking church members, who's wise and understanding among you? Because later on in this pericope, this section of Scripture, he's going to talk about a different kind of wisdom. And I think it's important for us to understand that he's addressing it to the church here, because we're not exempt from this other kind of wisdom that he's going to address. For example, when we have problems and we have difficulties in life, oftentimes we want to know, well, how could a wise God allow such a thing to happen in our life? If God is so smart, why didn't he take care of these problems? And then we also can begin to approach in our daily life from time to time, kind of coming in and out of wisdom. These two kinds of wisdom that are talked about here. Now also, in this first verse here that we're looking at, it talks about not only being wise, but also understanding. And that comes back to your tree. Because sometimes we can be very smart, but we really don't understand. And then what is the source of our understanding? What do we get out of it? Because we live in an incredibly technological world that is seeing and smarter than you think ever before in terms of humanity, knowing so much, having so much information and the like. And yet, I would say at the same time, there's a lack of understanding in terms of how all this got here. I mean, the road that many take in terms of understanding the universe, the creation, God, appears to, there's different understandings along that line. So, being wise and understanding appears to have become even more difficult, though, in this age of knowledge, because everybody is entitled, and not only entitled, demands their opinion and presents things as how they see it, and also as being true. And sometimes, on social media, being totally unchallenged and unwilling to let's talk about this. Is this true or not? So the Apostle James addresses being wise and understanding in knowledge. And he addresses the source of being wise and understanding. As well, he gives applications and specific results of being wise and understanding. And we also want to take a look at the source. Because you think, well, in terms of source, well, there are many sources out there. However, I'm going to suggest there are two main sources in terms of what being wise and understanding, and also in terms of wisdom. So when we think about wisdom, it changes how we use knowledge that we have had, and also the knowledge which we will receive. You think about, well, what's wise to do in a particular situation? When is it wise to say something, and when is it wise not to say something? We were laughing at Bible study this past week because I was busy telling Stacia and Joanne about how to have faith and just do all these things. And, my mouth was moving. And then we moved on to a problem that I had difficulty with. And, again, it's like, I was mouthing those things, but my problem is a little more difficult. And so we learn from the experiences that we have. So knowledge in and of itself has potential, though, for both good and bad. And we think about wisdom, we're generally thinking about the application of that knowledge, understanding that knowledge, when to present knowledge, when not to present knowledge, how to perceive that knowledge, and the like. So that application then can also be bad. It's like the little child is asking the mother, "Mommy, where did I come from?" And she goes into a whole lecture about how all these things happen. Where did we come from? Oh, we came from Germany, or we came from this, or we just came from the grocery store. The knowledge of the application at the right time. But also, knowledge can be sterile, factoid, and informational. When we think about wisdom, is that all God is trying? Well, when we think about wisdom, is that all we get? It's just sterile. It's just a fact. We're not doing anything with it. So, with that thought in mind, I want to just briefly touch on something that you're all familiar with, and the application in part. When we think about knowledge and we think about wisdom, the person that comes to our mind is Solomon. Solomon is recorded, and we'll go and read this from 1 Kings chapter 3, as a man who was very wise, and he was wise in a number of ways, one of which is that he asked for wisdom. When he was given an opportunity of saying, well, what is it that you want? He asked God for wisdom. And so this is what we read in 1 Kings chapter 3 and in verse 7. Now, O Lord my God, you have made me your servant, king in place of my father David. But I am, and notice here, as he's taking over leadership, but I'm only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. So this is new to him because, again, when you're made king, things begin to change. It's just like when you go from being an assistant to somebody to becoming boss, it changes. When you go from just being a person to the parent, it changes. And I had to laugh. I had a conversation with my son this morning, and he's telling me about things, and I said, that's the interesting thing about parents. All of a sudden you realize ways that you lived, thought, and all that kind of come back to haunt you, and you learn from it. But it's an ever ongoing process, and by the way, it's normal for all of us. It's normal for all of us. And then he goes on in Kings in verse 12. And he says here, I will do what you have asked. I will give you, what he asked for is wisdom. And notice, I maybe need to back up here, verse 10. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and have not asked for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administrating justice. So, here are the qualities. There's application to wisdom. Then he goes on to say in verse 12, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. The smartest, wisest person ever. Well, there is one smarter, we know. But this is Solomon. But so in talking about wisdom and in talking about Solomon, a couple of things must factor in. There's a difference between knowing and doing.
Feeling the blues today, or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life or need spiritual advice? The Worldwide Church of God is located in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto, California. We welcome everyone to attend our worship services with us every week at the times listed on your screen.